Bone. They have been known to live for days with half a dozen balls through their lungs, and even with very severe injuries in the heart. So far we had never met with a brown bear, although with its tracks in the mud or sand, and these we had seen nearly a foot in length, exclusive of the claws, and full 8 inches in width. What to do now was the question. To stand and fight with such weapons as we possessed was madness, and it was folly to think of escape by flight in the direction of the prairie, for not only were the bears running towards us from that quarter, but at a very short distance back from the cliffs, the underwood of briar bushes, dwarf willow, etc., was so thick that could not have made our way through it all. And if we kept our course along the river between the underwood and the top of the cliff, the animals would catch us in an instant. For as the ground was boggy, we could make no progress upon it, while the large flat foot of the bear would enable him to travel with ease. It seemed as if these reflections, which it takes some time to embody in words, flashed all of them through the minds of all of us. In an instant, for every man sprang at once to the cliffs, without sufficiently thinking of the hazard that lay there. The first descent was some 30 or 40 feet, and not very precipitous. The clay had also partook in the slight degree of the loam of the upper soil, so that we had scrambled down with no great difficulty to the first terrace. The bears plunging after us with a headlong fury. Arrived here, we had not a moment for hesitation. There was nothing left for us now but to encounter the enraged beasts upon the narrow platform where we stood, or to go over the second precipice. This was nearly perpendicular, 60 or 70 feet deep, and composed entirely of the blue clay which was now saturated with the late rains, and as slippery as glass itself. The Canadian, frightened out of his senses, leaped to the edge at once, and slid down with the greatest velocity down impetus of his course. We then lost sight of him, and of course supposed him killed, for we could have no doubt that his terrific slide would have continued from precipice to precipice until it terminated with a plunge over the last end of the river, a fall of more than 150 feet. Had Jules not gone in this way, it is more than probable we should have all decided in our extremity upon attempting the descent, but his fate caused us to waver, and in the meantime the monsters are upon us. This was the first time in all my life I had ever been brought to close quarters with a wild animal of any strength or ferocity. And I have no scruple to acknowledge that my nerves were completely unstrung. For some moments I felt as if about to swoon, but a loud scream from Greeley, who had been seized by the foremost bear, had the effect of arousing me into exertion, and when once fully aroused, I experienced a kind of wild and savage pleasure from the conflict. One of the beasts, upon reaching the narrow ledge where we stood, had made an immediate rush at Greeley, and had borne him to the earth, where he stood over him, holding him with his huge teeth lodged in the breast of his overcoat, which by the greatest good fortune he had worn, the wind being chilly. The other, rolling rather than scrambling down the cliff, was under so much headway when he reached our station that he could not stop himself until the one half of his body hung over the precipice. He staggered in a sidelong manner, and his right legs went over while he held on in an awkward way with his two left. While thus situated, he seized warmly by the heel with his mouth, and for an instant I feared the worst, for in his efforts to free himself from the grasp, the terrified struggler aided the bear to regain his footing. While I stood helpless, as above described, through terror, and watching the event without ability to render the slightest aid, the shoe and moccasin of W were torn off in the grasp of the animal, who now tumbled headlong down to the next terrace. but stopped himself by means of his huge claws from sliding farther. It was now that Greeley screamed for aid, and the prophet and myself rushed to his assistance. We both fired our pistols at the bear's head, and my own ball, I am sure, must have gone through some portion of the skull, for I held the weapon close to his ear. He seemed more angry, however, than hurt, and the only good effort of the discharge was in his quitting his hold of Greeley, who had sustained no injury, and making at us. We had nothing but our knives to depend upon, and even the refuge of the terrace below was cut off from us by the presence of another bear there. We had our backs to the cliff, and were preparing for a deadly contest, not dreaming of help from Greeley, whom we supposed mortally injured, when we heard a shot, and the huge bear fell at our feet, just when we felt his hot and horribly fetid breath in our faces. Our deliverer, who had fought many a bear in his lifetime, had put his pistol deliberately in the eye of the monster, and the contents had entered the brain. Looking now downwards, we discovered the falling Bruin making ineffectual efforts to scramble up to us. The soft clay yielded to his claws, and he fell repeatedly and heavily. We tried him with several shots, but did no harm, and resolved to leave him where he was for the crows. I do not see how he could ever have made his escape from the spot. We crawled along the ledge on which we stood for nearly half a mile before we found a practicable path to the prairie above us. I did not get to camp until late in the night. Jules was there, all alive, but cruelly bruised, so much and so indeed that he had been unable to give any intelligible account of his accident or of our whereabouts. He had lodged in one of the ravines upon the third terrace, and had made his way down its bed to the river shore.